Today, we're looking at a red ink by Levenger Cardinal Red. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that if you're only interested in certain parts, you can skip around. But if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram. And if you're new here and like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put it into this Noodler's Neponset with a music nib. I wrote with it for a day. I then used it to take the notes for this video. For the first writing sample, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. There is an additional writing sample that'll happen later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in bottle form, so it comes in a bottle like this. Now, inside their bottles, this is the Always Greener that I just couldn't get to stop bleeding through. But inside their bottles, they do have these cones that some people hate, some people enjoy. I have nothing against them. I find them useful plenty of times. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a little lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 4 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 5 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any. Tomoe River. No bleeding. Minor Tomoe River ghosting, but it is there. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. Extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. Medium's just a tad darker than the extra fine, nowhere near as dark as the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get any. And Levenger with no bleeding, and Levenger. Rhodia with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 4 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, not as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation, and there was none. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this is very interesting in that it's a plain red pushing its way up, normal as can be, light to darker, but at the very top we see a magenta line. We see that there is some magenta to this ink, and that's rather interesting because I sort of would have expected a little bit of color variation when I start to see similars like that. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. Now that red has started to truly bond a bit with this filter paper. The rest is pushing its way up. It does come up. We still see hints of that magenta at the top. It does make me think that some of the magenta stayed down below. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation, not at all. Now, water is reactivating and lifting the darkest tones, but not a lot. It's leaving a ton of this ink behind. Now, water didn't do it entirely for me to get this out of my pen. I did have to go use pen flush. Now, the pen flush is doing just a little bit more than the water on paper, but it absolutely very quickly got it out of my pen. 1/3 bleach solution is not completely removing it from the paper. It's really bonded in there. So this as a faster drying ink is one of the ways that they're marketed. It really bonds with the paper quickly, which is why the 1/3 bleach solution had so much trouble. I test viscosity or flow with a thing called a tilt test. I'll link it somewhere down below or up in the cards. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Levenger's Cardinal Red has a viscosity of 1.89, making this a wetter ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and what I found is the average dry time is 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Levenger's Cardinal Red has an average dry time of 6 seconds, making this a very fast drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Levenger's Cardinal Red, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice blue, and I chose Robert Oster's Fire and Ice. The second writing sample was done on yellow Rhodia and white lines paper. Here we're looking at the yellow Rhodia to see what kind of tone change we might undergo for having a yellow paper instead of a white or off-white. And really, this yellow paper has no effect on this ink, meaning for me that one, it bonds very quickly, which we know, but the other is this is a very opaque a color. Here we have white lines paper with no bleeding. Wait a second. With minor bleed spots in the extra fine. Minor show through. The show through wouldn't stop you from using it, but the extra fine has minor bleed spots. The medium has none. It's just strange to look at, but that's what's there. The 1.1 is no feather spread. Halo sheen, no shade. Extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. Medium is a little darker than the extra fine, not quite as dark as the stub. With no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any, and that is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Levenger's Cardinal Red? This is a good, boring, predictable red ink. No matter what you do, you always get the same tone. You get a solid performance out of this red, and I can really appreciate its being boring and predictable. Boring is good because I know exactly what I'm going to get, no matter what pen I put it into. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? As I said, it doesn't matter. It's as boring and predictable, the same red all the time. It's beautiful in its performance for that, so it's dealer's choice here. If you've made it this far, and according to my analytics, 50% of you aren't, and you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. If you are not subscribed, I would invite you to subscribe, and thanks for watching.